Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio. I'm James Spencer.
I'm Steve Wilkes.
We're relaxing today.
It's very calming up here today in Studio B.
That's right. This is a different kind of format. We're all about home brewing, in case you don't know. And you can find our DVDs on our website along with our Brewer's Logbook. We have our brand new Brewer's Logbook.
The 2011.
That's right, that you designed. Again, it looks great.
Thank you.
And they are here, and they are on the store. And by the time that you hear this, we will also be shipping out our new extract brewing and partial mashing DVD as well.
Boy, it's just like going to Macy's. There's just so many goodies.
And you can make a gingerbread house. If you order enough of them,
That's right.
You can glue gingerbread to the DVDs with icing.
Well, yeah. Maybe not.
But I thought that to celebrate our new DVD, I thought we could get together and just chat, drink a couple of home brews, and go over some. You could help me with my email backlog.
I think we should clear that backlog out and enjoy this beer that you've got. Lovely little all grain, all wheat beer. Tell us about it.
Well, I shall. It is my second attempt at a 100% wheat beer.
This is the sophomore version.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
This is a little session beer. I just wanted to see because I got this kegerator, and I discovered this is my second keg of beer. I got another keg of root beer for the kids, but this is the second keg of beer, and I realized fairly quickly that beer goes through that thing real fast. So, as I predicted it would. So what I've done is I've made a session beer, and this beer I think I figured out has like 3.8% alcohol or something like that. So it's just 6 pounds of malted wheat, and I mashed doing the brew in the bag thing. 5-gallon batch of beer, half an ounce of Styrian Goldings at 90 minutes. Quarter ounce at 60 minutes, and then a quarter ounce at 15 minutes. Switch to menthols.
The Camels are starting to bother me. But more doctors do prescribe Camels than any other cigarette.
You've been reading old magazines.
That's right. Well, it's a really nice beer.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I use German white yeast 3333 German wheat yeast. And believe it or not, I brewed this beer a week ago yesterday.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's carbonating up nicely. It's got lovely flavor. It's all German ingredients. I have a kind of a desire to go invade Oklahoma right now, but that should pass.
No, I take it back. It was a week ago, 2 days ago. So
Okay.
we're recording on Tuesday, brewed it on a week ago Sunday, but I kegged it yesterday.
Well, I really like it. It doesn't, it's just really nice, and I want to use the word malty, but that's not quite right. but it's got a little backbone to it, and I like that. It's not so effervescent and thin. So, good job.
Well, thank you. And I put on Facebook that I was kegging this beer, and somebody said, "What? You're kegging only a week after brewing the beer?" And I said, "Yeah, well, I took a gravity reading and tasted the hydrometer sample, and it tasted good."
Well, there you go.
So I didn't see any reason to keep it on the yeast anymore.
Heck no.
It's a low gravity beer. It's a wheat beer. It's meant to be cloudy.
Yep.
So why waste time?
That's right.
And I put it in the keg and refrigerated it overnight, and I used Sean Terrell's advice of just, not ramping up the pressure on the keg, but just shaking the keg at serving pressure. And it seems to be. I mean, it's going to get a little bit more carbonated as time goes on, but it's pretty good.
Well, it's lovely,
Thank you.
and it will help inform me as we move through today's podcast.
At least inspire you.
Yeah, something like that.
And a few days ago, I bottled the Zombie Belgian
Yeah.
that we brewed on the video podcast, the Halloween video podcast. And it was tasty at bottling. And I think it's going to be really nice. And somebody on Facebook said, "Is that a Zombie Belgian? Is that an all-brain beer?" All brain.
Yeah.
So what are you brewing? You brewed anything lately?
Well, I've got a nice big American ale ready to bottle, and I haven't brewed really in a little bit because I've been so busy with school. Of course, I'm working at the university where I work, but I am getting ready to brew Steve's Winter Stout.
Oh,
So it'll be a lot of fun. It's I don't have my notes in front of me, but 9 pounds of Maris Otter and a couple of pounds of Vienna, and 6 to 8 ounces of chocolate malt, and an English Safale. Is it the 04? Safale 04?
yeah,
I believe.
yeah.
So so pretty straightforward, and I may or may not throw a little molasses in there.
Oh, you will.
I probably will.
And some honey.
Some honey and some ginger and some whatever, some raisins.
You have an issue with staying out of the cupboard.
Yeah,
which is okay.
Yeah.
Because you come up with beers that are delicious and interesting and unique.
So anyway, that's on the docket for this week to get brewed.
Well, the first email that I want to read is from our buddy Andy's dad, Neil Sparks.
Hey, Neil.
He says, "James, it's Broken Arrow, not Broken Bow." And doggone it, I knew. I went to on last week's podcast.
Right.
I went to Broken Arrow to do the Stein beer thing at Gene Collins's house, which was wonderful, by the way. That was just incredible. I assume you've seen the video.
I have. It was great, and I was so inspired by that. I mean, it really. I probably won't do it, but I mean, it's very inspiring. I'd like to go do it with those guys, and just. I was stunned at how hot the rocks got, and the idea of the caramelization that happens when it hits that. Oh, it was very cool.
Yeah, and I think my knowledge of Oklahoma geography is not what it should be.
Well, because you went to Broken Bow. That was your first mistake.
Boy, was that a wrong turn. Should have taken a left turn at Albuquerque.
That's right.
So yeah, I kept saying all week, I'm going to Broken Bow, and Susan, my wife, kept saying, no, you're going to Broken Arrow. And I think I told you, in fact, that I was going to Broken Bow.
Yeah.
And we joked that Broken Bow was right next to Splintered Finger. But
scraped wrist. Walking buffalo.
Bruised forehead.
Yeah. Yeah, those jokes could go on for a long time, and maybe they shouldn't.
So anyway, I was so proud of myself because I made it through the episode without saying Broken Bow. Sure enough, Neil, who's our, he's ever vigilant at keeping us on the track, pointed out that I think the very first mention of Broken Anything was Broken Bow in the last week's podcast. So I apologize to the phone guys for getting the name of your town wrong out there. We should just say Tulsa.
Yeah. Greater Tulsa.
There you go. So anyway, that was a lot of fun. And I'm so happy that I went out there. It was a great experience and great content as well. Dave from Manchester in the UK writes in. He says, I drive long distances with work and listen to lots of podcasts during the day, including yours. Woo-hoo. Thanks for including us. I was listening to your talk with Chris Colby on the mashing experiment and the science behind it and thought, what about a control? Now, the mashing experiment we've got going on, and I want to talk about, there's 2 experiments that we're going to do. The mashing experiment, and you can go to byo.com and look at Chris Colby's blog, and you can now see a kind of complete description of how you do the experiment, what parameters that we're looking for, what variables to record and all that.
Yeah.
What we're doing is we're comparing, and you pick 2. pick at least two: fly sparging, batch sparging, no sparging, or brew in the bag.
Right.
So you pick two of those, brew the same beer,
Yeah.
and then compare the results.
Although I understand with 6 you get egg roll. If you're really industrious.
So Dave says, what about a control? Brewing the same beer twice to check the consistency of each batch would be an important experiment. After all, if the same beer cannot be replicated twice, then testing subtleties like the difference between fly and batch sparging would be thrown into question. Many people will have done this as they repeatedly brew their stock ale, but many, like me, will brew with whatever exciting new ingredients they find or whatever is left in the brew cupboard,
Yeah.
like Steve, when they get an evening to brew. Well, I think that's a good point. And that's one luxury that we often don't have in these experiments is repeating the experiment to see if you get the same result. But I'm hoping that spreading this experiment out amongst brewers across the country and around the world,
Yeah.
and noting to see if we have any trends, like we've done with the Irish Moss experiment and
Right.
the over-pitching or under-pitching experiment, and the, does your beer get ruined if you leave it for a couple weeks extra on the yeast experiment.
Right.
All those, we didn't do repeated batches ourselves, but the fact that we had people around the world doing the experiment, getting similar results for the most part,
Right.
is an indication that something's going on there.
You could extrapolate from that.
That's right. So what I suggest is that you do, as Dave says, like a stock ale, something that you brew a lot, and use that as your test beer.
Yeah, and if you're really dedicated to the experiment itself, a fairly straightforward beer, I would think brewing something, with every spice that you had available, might cloud the results a little bit. So, if you have a nice, simple session stock ale, and you already kind of know what you get from that beer, it would be interesting to see. I'm an infusion mash brewer. I don't mess around with
Right.
anything else just because I don't.
And do you do fly sparging or batch sparging?
Batch sparging.
Okay.
Yeah. And so infusion mash, batch sparging. I mean, I've fly sparged in the past. I've not done a brew in the bag, except with you.
Yeah.
But so I guess where I'm going with that is I could fairly well predict what it ought to taste like based on the history of it. So it would be interesting to do that. Do you have any sense? Have you guys talked about any sense about what one might expect?
Well, I mean, I have a feeling that, since the experiment is collect the same amount of wort out of the grain. So in other words, shoot for the same target starting volume.
Right.
Pre-boil volume.
Right.
And I suspect that what we're going to see is differences in efficiency. In other words, the difference in the original gravity of that wort.
And I would wonder if you might see a little difference if someone might experience over sparging. In other words, fly sparging and pulling out so much stuff that you kind of get some bitterness or some astringency that you might not get if you just pulled it like a first runnings and a light kind of batch sparge. So that'll be interesting to see. And I think that he has a very good point, but I would agree that if you can spread the statistical sample out enough, that you'll at least see a trend, and that's really what you're after.
And also attenuation.
Yeah.
Do you get more fermentable wort doing it one way than the other? Like for instance, with brew in the bag, I'm going to start with a thin mash, like this wheat beer that you're drinking right now.
I was drinking.
Well, feel free to you have a wireless microphone on. You can get.
Oh, that's right. I can take that left turn at Albuquerque. It'll know.
You can go get some more. And it's less than 4% alcohol, so it's good. Yeah. So, but I started off, my water to grain ratio was 4 quarts per pound. And that's pretty darn thin.
Yeah.
and you would think, I mean, common knowledge is that if you do a thin mash, that you'll get a thin beer, that you'll get a more fermentable wort.
Mm-hmm.
And is the dog snoring?
I believe so.
But even though this finished out at, I think, 1.008, it doesn't taste thin.
It doesn't taste thin. When we were talking earlier, I wanted to use the word malty,
Mm-hmm.
and because it's got a little spine to it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's not a watery beer.
yeah,
Anyway, so I'm looking forward to that experiment, and I hope to. Next week is Thanksgiving
here in America.
here in the United States.
Yes,
When is it in Canada? They do it in Canada, do they?
they do it,
before?
and I believe they do it
After?
earlier in the year than we do, though I don't know the date.
Happy Thanksgiving. and we will be dark next week. There won't be a show next week because got lots of family stuff going on. And I hope everybody has a happy Thanksgiving. I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to say that again for the end of the show. Andreas emails in on this same note. I'm interested in participating in the BBR-BYO mashing experiment, but I have some ideas to run by you and some questions. I plan comparing fly sparging versus a no sparge method. Should I be using identical equipment to do this experiment? I plan on using a false bottom for the fly method, so should I use false bottom for the no sparge method too? That is what I planned on doing and would like to do. I would say yes.
Yeah,
I would say yes because then if you use different equipment in that case, you're introducing two variables.
yep.
And we're trying to compare one variable.
Yeah, I would say, in general, I mean, no matter who you are, what your situation is, the more you can do it the same, the better the result will be, or
Mm-hmm.
I should say the better the data would be.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, the way that you collect the wort, if you can do it the exact same way, then I would do that.
Now I don't have a choice because I'm doing brew in the bag versus batch sparging.
So your technique is different.
Different technique.
Right.
Different a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I'm being a hypocrite. That's what.
Well, but
Do as I say, not as I
but
do.
if you in his case, he has the ability to pull it the same way.
Right.
So I would just say that the more every step that you can replicate,
Yeah.
you should, and obviously where the technique diverges to, then it has to, and that's just how it is.
Right. Yeah, that would. I mean, it would be interesting to see what Andreas comes out with. So he says, so I will do the no sparge first, and collect a certain volume for pre-boil. Let's say 6.5 gallons, which is around what I usually get. So when I fly sparge, I will also collect 6.5 gallons for pre-boil. Yes.
Yep.
So if the pre-boil gravities are different, should I readjust the hop additions so I can achieve the same IBUs, or should I try to achieve the same IBU to gravity point ratio in an attempt to keep the only changes in taste and such to come from the mash technique? I would say keep the hops the same.
I would too.
Again, wanting to keep the variables to a minimum.
Yeah. Although I get where he's coming from. That he's trying to isolate this one particular point.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it might be more useful to say which, when it's all said and done and I'm drinking the beer, what is it that I notice that's different?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd keep the hop schedule exactly
Yeah.
the same. So once you get that work collected, make the beer exactly the same.
Yeah.
And then you'll see some differences,
Yeah.
we think.
He says, this time I will not be doing a batch sparge, but for future reference, when it comes to calculating water amounts for strike and the batch sparge, you would like to collect the same amount for each drain of the mash tun. Yeah, that's generally what I do. You want to keep the two poles from the mash tun about the same.
Yeah.
There will be water absorbed by the grain initially, but can you assume that no water is absorbed in the batch sparge addition since the grain should be saturated from the strike rest addition. In other words, when you drain the water out of the mash tun for the first time in
Right.
batch sparging,
Right.
I find, and maybe you see if you back me up on this, that whatever volume I put in the mash tun for the batch sparge, that's what I will collect again.
I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the grain's
Yeah.
saturated.
Yeah.
The grain is full. It's not going to absorb any more water.
Yeah, I don't figure like an extra, 2 cups or pint per,
Right.
Yeah, it comes out the same.
Yeah. So, for instance, I can reliably, if I'm shooting for, say, 6.5 gallons pre-boil, if I collect, say, 3 gallons for my first runnings, I just put 3.5 gallons of sparge water in there, mix it around, and drain it out, and that's what I get. Christopher, the wind is blowing through the. This should have been the Halloween version.
I know, it's like moaning Myrtle.
She's in the bathroom.
Oh.
When I was listening to this week's podcast, Christopher says, I thought of another question to ask. My question is about mash thickness. I remember something that was said on the mash efficiency episode with Kai, where he said that a thinner mash aids in efficiency. So my question is, would it not be better to have a thin mash as long as you end up with a target volume? It seems that a lot of brewers speak about thin mashes as if they were bad. To me, this would seem better. You could either collect more water and boil longer, which may create some extra darkening, or you could just use less to sparge. Now, this is one of those questions where you're going to get a different opinion. Like, for instance, with this batch, with this beer you're drinking, it was 4 quarts per pound,
Yeah.
which, before I did brew in a bag, I thought would be unwise to do. But Gene, with his beer, for the Stein beer, he used, I believe it was 1 quart per pound. He likes a very thick mash. And you know what? He brews some awesome beers.
Yeah.
But this beer's pretty good too.
Well, yeah. Well, I think. Well, I don't know what I think. I think sometimes it gets down. It gets down to kind of almost like a religious point of view, and what I mean by that is, there's a lot of ways to get to heaven, with your beer, and and so I mean, a thick mash.
We should run this show on Sunday.
We should run this. That's right. Holy cow! That's the Pope's herd. But a thick mash makes a great beer. A thin mash can make a great beer.
Yeah.
And and sometimes you get down to trying to figure out how many angels can dance on the head of that pin. How many, just one's actually all can do it. But if you're making great beers,
Yeah.
then you're making great beers.
Well, I mean, another good thing about this experiment is that I am going to have the opportunity to do side-by-side comparisons of, a thin mash with a brew in the bag and a thicker mash, which is what I usually do with batch sparging.
Right.
I think the thinnest mash I've ever done with batch sparging was like 2 quarts per pound. But with brew in the bag, But you know what my efficiency was in this beer?
No. 100%.
Well, 87.5%.
Whew. Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
And I ran the wheat through the mill twice because I don't have to worry about a stuck sparge with the brew in the bag.
right.
Now I'm not going to do that. Now I'm not going to do that with the experiment because I'm not going to treat the grain differently between the two. But it'll be darned interesting to see what happens with it. So, and Kai's been doing all kinds of experiments with this stuff. So,
Yeah.
Google, Kai Troyster and go to his website and see all the wonderful stuff that he's been doing. And we went to his presentation at NHC,
We did indeed.
and he's a smart guy.
Yeah, he sure is.
Chad Warner who we, pardon me, we met. He was one of the finalists at the long shot, Sam Adams long shot competition a couple of years ago. And he goes through 2 Brewers logbooks every year. I'm assuming he makes small batches because, to fit 200 gallons in 100 batches, Chad says, it was great to hear you and Andy return to the topic of kegging. I didn't hear you talk about the importance of using some food-grade lubricant on the O-rings. It makes everything slide together without tearing up the O-rings and helps them seat without over-tightening. Is that more difficult than foam stability to talk about with a straight face? Yeah. Lubing your dip tube is something that... Well... So good advice from Chad. Let's just leave it there. Lube your
tube.
Lube your tube. When you're... But that is good advice.
Yeah.
Andy sells lubricant there at the homebrew shop. Right by the keg things. So thanks, Chad. And Chad's got his new Brewer's Logbook, and he got a T-shirt this year.
All right.
So we need a picture, Chad, for a site. Michael from Rosa. Oh, and by the way, Chad's from Mobile.
Lovely city. I love Mobile.
Michael's from Roselle. My glasses. I need to bump up my Sam's Club. What is that? You got prescription glasses.
Yeah, but they're bifocals, so I have to. You got a monkey.
Let me hold it over here.
He's from Roselle, Illinois.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Sorry. He says, I'm new to homebrewing, and you keep referencing secondaries. I'm on my second batch ever, and my kit only included a single 5-gallon bucket fermenter. Why do we need secondaries? It's a topic we address in our DVD.
We certainly do.
Why do we?
So don't tell him.
Oh. You have to buy the DVD.
To buy the DVD.
Oh, it's too late.
Let's tell him anyway.
It's too late. I already responded to the email.
Yeah.
This is the one that I answered. So do you use a secondary fermenter?
I do if I'm dry hopping.
Mm-hmm.
I do if I'm doing some kind of any kind of a late addition. I do if I want to leave the beer alone, if I just don't have time to do much else with it. So I want to pull it off the yeast.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do that and leave it in the secondary. I used to use a secondary fermentation religiously because that's what I was told I had to do.
Uh-huh.
And then time went on, and I got busy and quit doing it and discovered it really didn't matter.
And then there was an experiment.
So, yeah, a secondary fermentation can be an important addition to your brewing arsenal. If you're brewing most of the time, if you're brewing kind of standard, a stock ale, kind of a regular thing, you probably don't need to do it. Just pull it off the yeast after it's been fully fermented and get it packaged up. If you're going to add some kind of flavor, some fruit, if you're going to put it onto 10 pounds of cherries for a couple of weeks, oak, whatever it might be that you're going to add, that flavor profile, you're going to probably do that in the secondary. And if it needs to set for any length of time, it should probably set in a secondary rather than a primary.
He says, due to my schedule, really busy, I let my beer ferment 3 or 4 weeks instead of 10 days like the beer kits recommended. Is there any harm in extending the fermentation period? He hasn't heard the episode with the brew your own experiment where we asked people to leave it on the primary yeast for 2 extra weeks and see if it ruined it. It doesn't. Nope. I was told it may taste more yeasty, but I thought my first batch was quite delicious, and I left it in the fermenter for 6 weeks. Thanks so much. Well, there you go. So this is another vote in the box for the opinion that leaving your beer on the yeast for an extended period of time doesn't hurt things.
Right.
Well, speaking of secondary, Drew Filkins was on the show a couple weeks ago talking about alternate priming ingredients.
Right.
And he talked about he brewed a grapefruit juice beer. He brewed
Shall I get you some more beer, James?
I swear, it's a low-gravity beer.
I can do that.
Oh, well, if you're not busy. Anyway.
Keep talking. I'm just moving around.
Someone asked, how more details on this grapefruit beer. Drew says that he added half a gallon of grapefruit juice during the last few minutes of the boil, and then he added another half a gallon at secondary. So here's the secondary again. Sound effects. While I did not boil this, the question was, do you have to boil the grapefruit juice if you're priming with it? So he answers, he did not boil this. I said that I would feel more comfortable pasteurizing the grapefruit juice if I were going to prime with it. But he says, I would have to agree with James. That's mine.
Okay.
That it's a great plan of attack. And then 40 ounces at bottling to carbonate. He says, basically, on the question of whether to sanitize the grapefruit juice if you're going to put it in the fermenter, or if you're going to prime with it, he says, I was talking to the brewer at Shorts the other day, and on their anniversary ale, which has blood orange juice in it, out of a can, they don't boil. They sanitize the outside of the cans with no rinse sanitizer before they open them and figure the contents is sanitized.
Yeah.
And add that to the primary fermenter. This is what I figured with just adding it out of the bottle. It's been pasteurized at the factory, and if I sanitize the outside, it should be fine. If you buy concentrated juice and mix it up, I would boil that.
Right.
Good thinking.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's a good point. If you, and we talk about in the video,
right,
canned extract, it's canned.
Yep.
It's in the can. If there was something inside it that was bad, like that was some sort of microbe, the thing would bulge, would it not?
Yeah, and if it's been, the malt, I mean, that's going to be sanitized. It's going to be sterile, you might say. But I was thinking about, I was asking myself, could there be a bug that would live in the juice that wouldn't be harmful to drink it, but it might be harmful if it were to replicate itself in your beer? The answer that comes back to me is no, there wouldn't be. It's been pasteurized.
Right. And if there was something fermenting the juice in the can, it would expand. It would bloat.
Yeah, it definitely would. Now, on the other hand, I'm thinking, what if you wanted to use like an unpasteurized apple cider? It's fall. You can buy unpasteurized apple cider all over the place. I wonder if you shouldn't pasteurize that before you add it.
That's a good question.
Just my 2 cents worth.
You're just here to ask questions.
I'm just here to be provocative. I'm a provocateur.
You're provoking.
I'm repulsive.
Let's see, what should I do next? Let's see. Les Howarth, who I've interviewed on the show, he's the author of the Homebrewers Recipe Database. He says he's just listened to our show about electric brewing.
Oh, yeah.
Am I keeping you up?
Oh, it was the turkey lunch.
You had too much tryptophan.
I did. I tryptophaned out. We had Thanksgiving at the student newspaper that I advised, and everybody brought a dish. And I brought the turkey and the gravy and ate pumpkin pie and turkey and green beans.
Wow. I had some canned soup, which I assume was pasteurized.
You'll know if you bloat later.
Is that my problem? I should have boiled it. Les says, I've just listened to your show about electric brewing. One option not mentioned was the use of induction heating for brewing. You know what that is?
Well, I should. I mean, I think I do, but I'm not going to put my foot in my mouth.
I wasn't sure myself, though. I don't know if I'm the first person to use this for brewing, but I'm sure I'm one of the first, so I thought I'd send you my thoughts. That's thoughtful. Les says induction heating is becoming more popular in professional kitchens since it has the big advantage that it only heats the cooking vessel and not the surrounding environment. Hence, if you can't stand the heat of the kitchen, get some induction hobs. Hobs. Did you know the burner? We call them burners over here.
Oh, no.
Hobs.
Hobs.
We call them hob. A little.
Where's not over here?
He's in the UK.
From the UK. Ah.
I should have said that.
Well, is this Hob on Regulo 3?
Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to say that.
Or Mark 4?
There's got to be an Are You Being Served reference.
I'm free.
I'm free. And I'm unanimous in that. He says this also has the advantage that it is very efficient. I don't know what the situation is in the USA, but here in the UK, it is possible to buy standalone hobs that run off the normal 13 amp supply or more powerful ones that would be installed as a fixture in the kitchen.
Huh.
I did a bit of research and bought the most powerful 13 amp hob I could find, which is a 2700 watt model. It works very well and is capable of easily boiling up to 6 gallons of wort. One aspect I've noticed is that it appears to produce a paler beer than my previous gas heating system did, so I guess it produces low caramelization. Induction works by inducing an oscillating magnetic field in the metal base of the boiling vessel, which produces a heating action. I guess this means that the delivered power is spread over a much larger area than it would be with a conventional electric element. So he says his hob has a timer control as well as a power control. So once the wort is boiling, I can just dial in my boil time, and this aspect is taken care of automatically.
I really like that.
It displays the remaining time before turning off, so I can be sure of my timings for hop and Irish moss additions. I found it to be controllable as gas because of the low thermal mass of the hob and mode of operation. As convenient as gas, no drilling required, and safe, no fumes in my garage brewery.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, will this work with any pot? And he says, I think they only work well with the appropriate grades of stainless steel, which is any that a magnet will stick to because it's a magnetic field. It kind of excites the material there, the metal. I don't think they work well with aluminum or copper. And after I had read that, I remembered that I went to, at one time, I was doing a story on an assisted living center, and they had these newfangled heating elements on their stoves that you could turn them on, and then you could take the pot off, and you could touch the stove.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't burn you. So I guess it's the same thing.
I think that's a great technology.
Yeah.
I'd love to check that out. I mean, that's really intriguing to me.
Yeah. Anything else that we can use in the brewery?
Yeah.
Especially something that would. And I'm sure that we're going to get email now from people who say, "Sure, I use mine all the time," but you never know. It's the first time anybody's that I can remember anybody's ever mentioned that.
Yeah.
And one last question. This is an essay question.
I have a number 2 pencil handy, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Just you got to stay in the oval. Joe says, "I'm from Kansas City, Missouri.
My hometown, or one of them.
I was returning from a month-long trip to Boston and Europe. I downloaded your podcasts, and they really helped long airport and air travel. While killing time at Frankfurt Airport, wishing I was homebrewing instead, I started to dream about my ideal brewing system. A dream piece of equipment would be a conical fermenter that you could pump boiling wort into and turn on a cooling system that would quickly bring down the temperature to the desired level. No wort chillers, garden hoses with leakage, etc. I would like to hear other listeners' dreams."
Oh.
So he wants a thing that you boil and ferment in.
Well, yeah.
So that's his dream piece of equipment.
Are you asking me mine?
Yeah. What's your?
Well, I don't know, but it probably involves barbecue. I think. There's a smoker and a conical fermenter all connected. I've never really thought about. I've never had that fantasy necessarily. What about you?
A dream piece of equipment. This may be
Or a dream system.
dream system.
So it's a pretty tall order to
Yeah.
speak extemporaneously on.
Yes, it is. Rather than just equipment, I would like my dream brewing thing would be a room tailored for the purpose.
Yes,
So that you have floor drains, you could spray it down with hoses.
Right.
You can, no matter what equipment you put in there, it's ready. You're ready to brew in
Yep.
that room. And maybe off in the corner, you have a temperature-controlled environment for kegging and lagering and all that. So maybe my dream piece of equipment is not a piece of equipment itself,
right.
but maybe the room in which to do it.
Now, see, when you started saying dream to me, beyond my flip answer of barbecue would be involved, I was thinking, I got this middle picture of being on my deck, but my deck was next to, say, like the Big Thompson River in Estes Park, Colorado. So in other words, I was imagining a place and a kind of an ambiance. Rather than
Yours is location.
Yeah, it's location. It's like it's the whole the environment of the brew day is important to me.
Right.
Although some nice equipment. A conical fermenter. If anybody wants to get me that for Christmas, I'll send you my mailing address. But I'm not. I've never really thought about my system beyond just I need a new colander. It's so simple. I want a colander that works.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So maybe if we asked if they're still listening by now.
That's right. We haven't bored
This
you
is
to
like the
tears.
most laid back episode ever, which I'm kind of enjoying.
Well, this is the NPR.
We're not close enough to the mic. Wait a minute. And now we're talking about brewing now.
Yes, and I've really enjoyed our time together today.
I have too, and I want to thank Steve Wilkes for coming over today,
Thank you, James.
and I'd like to extend an invitation if you would like to tell us on what your dream piece of equipment would be. We'd love to hear it.
That's right, and
You get a free tote bag
and a mug.
and a mug.
Well, we're wishing you all happy holidays as we move into that season. And James, I want to thank you for being on today's show.
I want to thank you as well.
No, thank you.
No.
Send your pledge to my address.
We'll have to leave it there.
Yes.
Now we've both worked at NPR stations.
Yes, we have. So
we are loyal NPR listeners and supporters.
Indeed.
But
Well, this was fun and self-indulgent.
yes, it was.
And I hope that people enjoyed it at least as much as I did.
Well, and we hope that you have a safe and happy Thanksgiving next week.
Indeed.
Brew some wonderful beers and share those wonderful beers with your family members.
Yeah.
And what else? If you aged your beers for our other BYO experiment, go to basicbrewing.com/experiment and enter your data.
Yep. Do that. Be there or be square.
And look on our website, basicbrewingshop.com, for our new DVD and our Brewer's Logbooks, both of which should be out there by the time you're hearing our voices.
Perfect for your gift-giving agenda.
That's right.
Yes.
Again, thanks very much.
Calling all beers.
All right.
All right.
We'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
Happy brewing.
Happy brewing.